All right, continue on here in chapter 2. Now let's get into organic chemistry. And this is a chemistry of carbon compounds. Now, carbon atoms are the backbone for all organic compounds. So, all right, and so the 4 basic biomolecules are all organic compounds. And you've heard of these 4 basic biomolecules before. This is carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So now nucleic acids are DNA and RNA. All right, so let's take a look first at carbohydrates. And these are compounds that are made of sugar molecules. All right, so this is showing fructose, glucose, lactose. These are all monosaccharides. So monosaccharides are simple sugars. All right, so the main one here for us is glucose. This is our blood sugar. This is the main molecules cells use for energy. And I'm not just talking about our cells use glucose for energy. This is a main molecule all cells use for energy. All right. So next are disaccharides. So if we take, and they're showing here, glucose and fructose, we put glucose and fructose together, that makes sucrose. That's a disaccharide. So sucrose is regular table sugar. You might have heard of a couple of these sugars like maltose, which is used in malts, and lactose, which is found in milk. Okay, so next are polysaccharides. In polysaccharides, this is showing one of those down here. Polysaccharides are essentially chains of glucose molecules. So they're long chains of glucose molecules. Go to this next picture. This shows the 3 main types of polysaccharides. We see starch and glycogen and cellulose. All right. Now starch is used by plants for energy storage. And you can see it's one glucose molecule after the next. Next is cellulose. Cellulose, one glucose molecule after next. This is used by plants in their cell walls. So this provides cell shape and also protects the cell. All right. So the difference between a woody plant and a non-woody plant is woody plants have a very thick cell wall. Non-woody plants have a very thin cell wall. All right. Now the thing about cellulose is it's not digestible by animals. So any animal that eats a high plant diet also has microorganisms, bacteria in their digestive system that helps them break down that cellulose. We cannot break down cellulose. Cellulose is commonly referred to as fiber. It helps move things through our system. All right. So, this is one of the problems about eating things like corn, is that corn will just work their way through our digestive system because once it gets past our mouth, if we don't get that cellulose covering of that kernel, it's just going to pass right through. And there's nothing in our digestive tract to break it down. All right, lastly here is glycogen. Glycogen is animal carbohydrate storage. As you can see, it's one glucose molecule after the next. All right, we use this for quick energy. This is stored in our liver and in our muscle cells. All right, so quick energy storage. All right, so if you need energy while you're working out or something, you're going to break down glycogen in your muscle cells. Stored in our liver because we can keep our blood glucose levels normal in between meals by just breaking down that glycogen in our liver, releasing glucose molecules into the blood. Now, we don't use glycogen for long-term energy storage. We use fat for that. I'll talk about that here in a minute. All right, so let's take a look at the next group, and these are lipids. Now, lipids are nonpolar molecules. They do not dissolve in water. And the first group are triglycerides. And this is showing the basic structure of all triglyceride molecules. Triglycerides have a glycerol molecule here and 3 fatty acids combined. All right. Now, triglycerides are much more commonly known to us as fats and oils. All right. So oils are liquids at room temperature. All right, and fats are solids at room temperature. And the only difference between this is showing a fatty acid of a fat. This is showing a fatty acid of an oil. So with these fatty acids of a fat, if you have 2 of these molecules, they can get really close together. With an oil, they can't get close together. And that's literally the difference between these 2 molecules, is how close these molecules can get together on whether they're solid, liquid, or at room temperature. Now, we use fats for long-term energy storage because fats can store a lot of energy in the same amount of space. All right? So 1 gram of a lipid, a fat, or oil is equivalent to 9 calories. 1 gram of a carbohydrate is equivalent to 4 calories. 1 gram of a protein is also equivalent to 4 calories. So we can put more than twice the amount of energy in the same amount of space in comparison to a carbohydrate or protein. And so that's why we use fats for long-term energy storage. All right. Next are phospholipids. This is showing a phospholipids. I'm going to talk about these more in the next chapter, but these are the main component of membranes. Next are steroids. Steroids, these are all steroids. Cholesterol, estrogen, testosterone, bile salts. So the commonality between these is this 4-ring structure. So all steroids have that 4-ring structure. All right. So I don't know why that switched again. But all steroids have that 4-ring structure. Now I do want to tell you that a molecule's shape determines its function. And so anabolic steroids have a shape that's similar to testosterone, so they have a similar function to testosterone. Now let's take a look at proteins. Proteins are large molecules composed of amino acids, and they have many, many functions in our body. And this is just trying to show regulation, transport, protection, contraction, lots and lots of functions here. These are trying to show amino acids, so there are 20 amino acids that make up all the proteins of life. All right, so this is showing that proteins have 3-dimensional shapes that are held together by these hydrogen bonds we talked about before. Now, one function that proteins have is that they are enzymes. So not all proteins are, but some proteins are enzymes. Enzymes are organic catalysts, and they're going to increase and control the rate of chemical reactions without themselves being changed. So this is showing an enzyme causing reaction. So just about every reaction that occurs in our body is controlled by an enzyme. All right? The reason that we can't break down cellulose is we don't produce enzymes to break down cellulose. The reason that people are lactose intolerant is they don't produce the enzyme lactase anymore to break down that sugar, lactose. All right? Now, with proteins, their shape, like all molecule shapes, determines their functions. But proteins can lose their shape. And this is a process called denaturing. And that's a change of shape of a protein. All right? And if we change the shape of a protein, it's going to lose its function. So a couple of things that can do this is high heat, pH changes. Now, just an example of high heat, if you ever cooked an egg, right, on a skillet, you notice when you're cooking that egg that the ovalbumin, the clear gelatinous stuff, becomes solid and becomes white. And that's a denaturing of that protein. All right? The curdling of milk is due to a pH change. Right? So there's bacteria in the milk, and those bacteria are going to feed upon the milk, and they're going to produce lactic acid. But as the name implies, it's an acid. It's going to change the pH of that milk. And so over time, this gets out of the normal range of the proteins that are in the milk, and they change shape, and that's that curdling that occurs. All right, let's take a look at the last group here, and these are nucleic acids. These are large molecules composed of nucleotides, and this is showing a nucleotide here. So the two here are DNA and RNA. So DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. That is our genetic material. So it's essentially the recipe to make another you or me or any other organism. It is made of 4 nucleotides, so adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. It is a double-stranded helix, which is what we see here in this picture here. All right, so 2 strands to it. 1 strand here, there's a second strand. Once again, those strands are held together by hydrogen bonds. Next is RNA. RNA stands for ribonucleic acid. And what RNA does is it makes proteins, synthesizes proteins. And it makes those proteins from the information that's on DNA. So that's what RNA does. So it is single-stranded, and it does not have a helix. It has 4 nucleotides. If we go back to this picture, it's showing these nucleotides here. So it has adenine, guanine, and cytosine, but instead of using thymine, it uses uracil. All right. The last thing I want to talk about is ATP. So ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. So this is the energy currency of the cell. Whenever we do anything in our body that requires energy, we're going to expend an ATP. So as you can see, here's adenosine right here, and then we have 3 phosphate groups on there. So when we use some energy, we're going to break one of these chemical bonds here, and that releases the energy to do whatever we need energy for. Moving molecules across membranes, causing muscle contractions, thought processes, whatever we need energy for. Okay? So when we use glucose for energy, as I mentioned before, we break down glucose and we convert that energy in breaking down glucose into making ATPs.